Hi, guys. We are on Unit 2, Space and Form. Last week we talked about free forms. Today we're going to be talking about body forms. So let's check it out. A short lesson. Whoa. Okay. Lesson 3, body forms. Lesson 3 introduces students to body forms. Body forms are special types of free forms. Okay. They're still considered free forms.
Do you know what a paper doll is?
Mm-hmm.
¿Saben lo que es un muñeco de
papel? So our objectives today are we going to be able to recognize and describe body forms in your environment and in artwork. You are going to look to see how you can create a clay figure that describes students' cultures. You're also going to compare the role of clowns and hunters in art created by a Pueblo artist and an Inuit artist. We're going to learn about Pueblo and Inuit artist. Interesting. Okay. So let's look at these statues. Remember we said statues are three-dimensional and it's something that you can walk around on. This one is called the Emergence of Clowns. It was made by layering coils of clay and then scraping them to make them look nice and smooth. This one is called Seal Hunter, and it was carved from one piece of stone using hand tools. Both artists made body forms.
Look closely at the two statues. Observen detalladamente las dos estatuas.
What role do you think clowns and hunters played in the societies that these statues were created in? Look closely at the people that you see every day and around you. Every person has a different body form. You can describe some of the forms using art terms. So let's go ahead and let's look at the statues. We're going to study the statues to learn a little bit more about body forms. First, let's look at this artist. Her name is
Roxanne Swensel.
Roxanne Swensel. She is an artist that lives in Santa Clara Pueblo, and she lives in the state of New Mexico. And she is a Native American, which means she is a Native American Indian potter. And the word nung means both clay and people in the Pueblo language. Clay is important to traditional Pueblo people for pottery. They didn't have Walmart and places like that to go to back then. So they would create pottery to hold things to cook in, to store their foods, and they also decorated them and made them for religious reasons. Okay, the name of the artwork is called Emergence of Clowns. The clan of Pueblo, they have sacred clowns. The Koshers are funny tricksters, but they're also important people in the Pueblo society. By using her culture and symbols of the Koshers and clay, she is explaining her belief in a story of how the Pueblos came into existence. So in her family and the people that she lives in her town, and their people are called they are the Native American, and they're called the Pueblo, the name of their people. They have certain stories and beliefs that were told from generation over generation, like grandma telling mommy, and then mommy telling you, and then you, when you grow up, tell your kids. And so they have different beliefs and different stories that were passed down from generation to generation, and this is just one of the things, and they would recreate, and everybody knows about in their society, and it's just a way of telling stories. So let's look at these. So very interesting. First, I thought this was like, okay, I like the designs. He has weird like hats on or something like that. I have no idea. That would be something that would be really interesting for you guys to look up later on if you wanted to. But you can see that some are laying down. Excuse me. Some are looking up in the sky. Ooh. And this is called Kiawak Ashuno, and it's Inuit, and he is a seal hunter. And let's look at this one right here. They said it was made out of stone. He's got a piece of leather in between his hands. I think did a really good carving of him. And he looks like he's on the ice and he is gone hunting to find some seal. They use seals for food. They also use them for all kinds of things because it's very, very cold up in the north. Okay? Excuse me for coughing. Let me see how we can pronounce this.
Kiawak Ashuna.
Kiawak Ashuna was born in 1933 in Canada. Canada is the big country above the United States. Okay? He taught himself how to carve, and he had been showing his artwork for a long time. And he has inspired his younger generation of the Inuit artists, because his people are called the Inuit. When you think of them, we call them like Eskimos, but they're actually called the Inuit. They're Native American Inuits. And his art creates traditional scenes such as family life, everyday people, Arctic wildlife, and religious things. So many Inuit carvers use stone that they found in the area. And he is known for his attention to detail in sculptures, which are all done by hand. So he would take like a pick and carve, into it, or maybe I'm not sure if it's really really soft. So maybe they could use some kind of tools or knives, and they created a sculpture. But that's very cool. What do you think the people in the statues are doing? I don't know about the first ones. The clowns are, oh my goodness, they're coming out of the ground. That would be a very interesting story to look up. And then the figure of the man looks like he's getting ready to go out and hunt. How do the artists use form to make the statues seem alive? Well, first of all, both of these artists use forms of people who are in the middle of doing something. They're not just standing there, and they're not just standing there straight. Like, remember when we talked about we were drawing our stick figures, and they were not just like this, they are in motion. So they created them in the middle of doing something. And this makes the people look more alive since they appear to be right in the middle of action. Body forms, like freeform shapes. Body forms are 3D versions of body shapes. A body shape is just a drawing of a person, and you can't see their sides or their back, just a front. So a form, you draw it so you can kind of see sideways, and you can kind of see different views. Body forms can be shown in many different positions, just like real bodies. Bodies are forms because they have height, width, and depth, so they look three-dimensional. Okay, just remember that a form is 3D.
How can you use body forms to show an action?
¿Cómo pueden usar las formas corporales para mostrar una acción?
So, if you had some Play-Doh or some clay, or if you can, if you didn't have any of that stuff, you could just use some flour and some water, making like dough. You could make a hand or a foot out of clay. Use the clay that you have at home, or if you don't have any, you could look on. There's all kinds of different types of clays that you could bake with things in your kitchen. Do not suggest that you do this unless you ask your mother to do this. So if you had some Play-Doh or some clay, you could start by making a hand or a foot out of clay. Pinch apart the clay to make the little fingers and toes. You can take your little finger and use it. Your finger. You could use a pencil for little details, and you can kind of create that as a tool. Think about hands and feet and how they work. Okay, look around and see what else that you can create. So here's an example of Sarah Leggett. She's 7 years old. Think about how she described herself using body forms. So let's see that she made herself as a little girl. She's got something in her hands. I'm not sure. Maybe she's on a towel or a blanket. So she made herself with some kind of headband, and she made herself with long hair. And she's got some shoes on. It looks like she's got some pants on. But she made it 3D, so it's not flat like a pancake. So you can look around it on the other side. Here's something that you could do. Can you make a body form to describe your culture? Okay, so a lot of us have different cultures. The United States is made up of many different people from many different countries, every country has their own culture, and your family might have a different culture, which means things that your family celebrates and things that they do um, over and over every year, like a tradition. Okay, so decide how your body form will represent your culture. Make the parts of your body from clay, and you can put the pieces together and add details. It doesn't have to have your culture, but I mean, it would be interesting if you did. So here is an example. So you can see how you're making, like if you have some Play-Doh, you could work on each piece at a time and sculpt each piece, the arms and legs and a head, and then try putting the body parts together and then add some details by using a pencil to etch the lines and the shapes. If you don't have clay, you could certainly try drawing one. So after you finish it, you should be able, if someone asked you what you did, you should be able to illustrate um, how you illustrated your culture in your body form. You should be able to tell people what are the 3 dimensions in your form: height, width, and depth. You can see how tall it is. You can see how wide it is. You can see how thick it is. And what would you title your body form? What would if it was a piece of artwork? How would you title it? And what other forms could you make to illustrate your culture? So if you're a Native American, what are some things that you could do to make your figure look like it was Native American? Would it have a traditional costume? If you are from Mexico, what are some outfits that they wear in Mexico? If you are from Asia, different Asian people have different customs and different backgrounds, different clothing that they wear. If you're from Africa, you could do all kinds of things, okay? And traditional clothing, things that they wear. So these are things that you can talk about, and you can create your own culture, even in your statues, like the statues and the sculptures that the Inuit and the Pueblo Indians created. So you are completed this week for lesson 3. If you have any Nearpod lesson for lesson 3, you will need to go onto your Canvas and complete your Nearpod lesson, and it will have some examples of how to create. It'll show me. It will ask you to do some things on Nearpod and to create some examples to show me that you know the difference between a body form and a body shape. Okay, if you are paying attention, you know what it is. If you do not have an assignment on Canvas and you only have a video, good for you. You are all set and you do not need to do a Nearpod video. Just watch this video for the week, and we'll see you next week.